Could you provide us with an overview that helps us understand your strategy and focus to making money in the markets?
So for me, it's so from a day trading point of view, it's trend based. But as an overview, what I'm doing is I will assess 5 or 6 markets. So I'm looking at the major indexes, major currency pairs, and I'm getting a gauge of where I think the overall trend is for that market over a weekly, daily, and sometimes even monthly scenario. So that happens independently of the trades that I actually place. Whereas before, what I used to do is I would purely focus on almost ticking the boxes off. So ticking the strategy criteria, right, place the trade. Whereas now what I'll do is I'll do my independent analysis and say, right, I think I've got a long bias towards euro at the moment, or a short bias towards the pound, whatever it is, cable. So I'll have that bias, and then I'm looking to marry that up with the strategy criteria on the lower time frames.
Could you give us a brief overview of your trading style? So how would you find and select potential trades?
Yeah. So what I'll do, usually on a Sunday, is I will do an overall analysis of the 5 major markets that I'm potentially going to trade that week. So there I'm looking at the higher time frames. So I'm looking at the daily, the weekly, and the monthly. And I'm gauging where my overall bias is, whether it's long or short to that market. And then what I'm doing is looking for where I can see the pockets of air or the gaps in the market are for me to be able to trade on the shorter term time frames. So then I'll be looking for trends maybe on the 60, and then ultimately looking for an entry on the 5. So if I'm looking at, say, the euro, and I think there is a decent gap of 100 points between one particular level and another, and I've done that assessment on the Sunday, if the market moves into that area on, say, Tuesday, I'll be looking to trade that because my overall bias is long, and then I'm getting my setup or my strategy criteria being met during the week.
Talk us through a previous trade that offers insight into what you do and how you do it.
There's a recent one. It was one on the DAX. So it was a trade where I'd been watching the DAX for a couple of days, and we'd had quite a lot of sideways movement on the higher time frames, and we broke out of that. And I'd been watching that and waiting for the market to break out. And it would have been very easy for me just to put my own emphasis on the market and try and just get in, saying I think it's going to go up. So I'm looking at it and going, if that market breaks higher, there's plenty of room. And then I think it was a Wednesday, and then the market broke, and then basically I had 4 trades that morning where all I was doing was capturing entries within that trend. So the market's already broken. I've not suddenly jumped into it. I've then gone to a lower time frame and waited for the price action to correspond with my strategy. So I'm waiting for price to pull back into areas where there's a moving average, there's a previous support and resistance. And it was one of those trades where not only were my criteria met, but also I had 3 trades on one trend, and they all ran for about 4 to 1. So that's not going to happen all the time. I'll be looking for scenarios like that. I'll be looking for the trades on a regular basis. The fact that I was able to run them was just a...
What's your emotion when that's happening? How are you feeling?
I still get emotional about trades. I get less emotional. The way I talk about it with the students that I work with, it's like a dial. Whereas when you start out, the volume, the emotional volume's at 10. Yeah. My emotional volume's down at probably 1 or half, because I still think it's important to be alert. I still think if you're unemotional, then you're in a situation where you can get lazy. It's a little bit like actors and actresses that say if they're not nervous when they go up on stage, it's time to retire. So I still feel emotional, but what I've already done, and I say this to all my students, is I've already decided what the plan is for that trade. So I've already decided that if we get to certain levels, I'm going to take profit at that point. If we get to these levels, I'm going to move my stop. So it all being predetermined helps. If you get into a trade but you don't know how you're going to get out of it, that will get you more emotional, whether you've got experience or not. So some things, I think it's really important for people to understand that experienced traders still feel emotions, but they've traded more regularly, and the chances are they've got a predetermined plan for what.
Do you always stick to it? Are you never tempted, if something's doing well, you're never tempted to go, I know I was going to come out there, but... Oh.
Okay, so I would say I'm human,
yeah.
right? So I'm flawed by by definition. So I would say 1 in 40 trades I will break a rule. Now, what will happen is quite often a rule will get broken because of a mistake, as opposed to me knowing that I shouldn't be in this trade or I shouldn't get into the next trade and just saying, sod it, I'm going to get in anyway. So that doesn't happen anymore. I've structured the way I work as well. So I quite like variety, which is another reason why I teach. So I've structured simple things like I go to the gym around lunchtime, so it gets me away from my screens. Because one of the patterns that I used to see was that if I sat in front of my screens all day, I would get bored. And as a result of getting bored, I'd break my rules or do something I shouldn't. So there was a lot of self-assessment, and I set things up in a way so that I get out of the house and I go and do other things, or I go and watch my stepdaughter at the stables. So I get the variety, because I'm not one of these traders that can sit there all day long. If I sit there all day long, it goes wrong. So yeah.